Hello! Welcome to Loop the Loop English channel. Today, we will talk about how to talk to anyone with confidence.
It's the worst feeling.
It really is. And this is always the worst part, maybe on the car ride home or while you're staring at the ceiling in bed at 2 in the morning, you play the whole scene back in your head.
Yep, the midnight replay.
Right. You construct this elaborate alternate reality where you actually spoke up, thinking about how perfectly that comment would have landed, how it might have shifted the dynamic of the room. You feel that sharp, lingering little sting of a missed connection.
It is a universally frustrating experience,
Yeah. Yeah.
You are holding the exact puzzle piece that the interaction requires the piece that would clarify a point or spark a genuine laugh, but you just keep it hidden in your pocket.
Yeah.
You essentially choose to observe a moment that you were entirely equipped to participate in.
You relegate yourself to being a spectator in your own life. And that sting of a misconnection isn't just you being mildly awkward, right? It is actually a deeply ingrained neurological defense mechanism kicking in.
That's the crazy part.
Yeah, your brain literally categorized a casual social gathering as a threat to your survival. So today, we are taking a deep dive into the exact machinery of that feeling.
We really are.
We're pulling insights from a fascinating analysis done on the Loop Loop English platform. And, while they originally framed these concepts for language learners who were trying to navigate entirely new cultural conversations.
Which is super difficult on its own.
Totally. But the underlying psychology they uncover about human interaction is completely universal. We are focusing today on the mechanics of building conversational confidence.
And we aren't just going to hand you a superficial list of icebreakers either.
No, not at all. We are going to deconstruct the invisible internal barriers that keep us entirely in our own heads. We're going to build a highly practical toolkit for starting, maintaining, and gracefully exiting any conversation you find yourself in.
Which is, frankly, the only way to actually create lasting change.
Right.
You cannot fix the hesitation until you understand the biological and psychological machinery driving it.
Right.
The language we use, like the literal words that come out of our mouths, is just the surface layer. The real work, the actual heavy lifting of social interaction, happens in the mind and the nervous system long before a single syllable is ever spoken.
Okay, let's unpack this. We need to start with what we're going to call the anatomy of hesitation. Like, why do we actively choose to silence ourselves?
Yeah, let's get into it.
There is a highly specific and frankly uncomfortably relatable story that serves as the foundation for this. It involves an individual named Oliver. He's at a professional conference a few years ago.
Okay.
He is standing in a circle surrounded by a group of people who are passionately discussing language learning.
Yeah.
Now, this happens to be one of his absolute favorite subjects in the world.
Right, so he's in his element.
Exactly. He possesses a massive wealth of knowledge about it. He has distinct opinions. He has the technical expertise to add immense value to the specific group of people. Structurally, it is the perfect opportunity.
The environmental variables are perfectly aligned for him to succeed.
Yeah.
I mean, he has domain expertise, he has a captive audience interested in that domain, and he is physically positioned within the group.
Right. It's a layup.
Yeah.
But what actually happens, he gets completely, totally paralyzed. He stands there and doesn't utter a single word for the entire duration of the discussion. Yeah. And what's fascinating is the exact internal interrogation that killed the opportunity. His mind essentially put him on the witness stand and subjected him to a hostile cross-examination.
Oh, I know this feeling.
Right. He started rapid-firing these questions at himself. Things like, what if I interrupt them? Or what if my comment sounds silly or amateurish?
Or what if nobody in this circle actually cares what I think?
Yes, exactly that one.
That internal monologue is incredibly powerful because it functions like a sudden, overwhelming radio static that completely drowns out your executive function.
And radio static, that's a good way to put it.
If you analyze the architecture of those specific questions, you notice two glaring commonalities. First, they are all entirely future-focused.
Okay.
And second, they are entirely negative. He is no longer analyzing the actual real-world conversation happening 2 feet in front of his face. He is retreated into his own mind to analyze a hypothetical catastrophic future that has not even occurred yet.
We treat casual, everyday conversations like they are these incredibly high-stakes pass-or-fail exams where every single syllable is going to be heavily scrutinized and graded by a panel of hostile judges.
Exactly.
And I want to push back on this framework for a second,
Yeah.
because if we are being entirely honest with ourselves, aren't those fears actually somewhat valid?
What do you mean?
I mean, what if we do interrupt someone and it completely derails the flow of a really important point? What if we misread the hierarchy of the room and it is genuinely deeply awkward?
Right.
I think we sometimes dismiss the fear of awkwardness as irrational, but in a professional setting, awkwardness can damage your reputation. Social friction is real.
Oh, those fears feel intensely valid in the moment. Absolutely.
Yeah.
The physiological response in your body is identical to a real physical threat.
Yeah, your heart is pounding.
The crucial distinction to make here, and this is the absolute root cause of the hesitation, is that the core problem in these moments is almost never a lack of knowledge. And it is very rarely a genuine, objective threat of social ruin.
Okay, so what is it then?
The paralysis is entirely, 100% rooted in the evolutionary fear of tribal rejection. It is the fear of judgment, the fear of awkward moments, and the fear of making a mistake in front of the group.
Tribal rejection.
When you are standing there asking, what if I interrupt? You are not genuinely worried about the logistical flow of the conversation. You don't actually care about their pacing.
That's true. I'm usually just panicking.
Right. You are terrified of them perceiving you as rude and therefore pushing you to the bottom of the social hierarchy. When you ask, what if my comments sound silly? You are terrified of being perceived as incompetent and losing your status.
You are playing defense. You are trying to protect your standing in the tribe.
Precisely. It is a deeply primitive defense mechanism. Your amygdala perceives the risk of looking foolish as an existential threat.
Wow.
But here is the grand, beautiful irony of the entire situation. This is a realization that can instantly shatter that paralysis.
I'm ready. What is it?
While you're standing there, intensely overanalyzing every single word you might potentially say, your heart rate elevated, absolutely terrified of how your comment will be perceived, the people you are so afraid of judging you are not analyzing you at all.
Wait, really?
They aren't waiting for you to slip up. Why? Because they are entirely, wholly preoccupied with thinking about themselves.
Oh my gosh. That is both hilarious and incredibly comforting.
Isn't it?
We are sitting there suffering, truly suffering, believing that we are the main character standing under a blinding high-wattage spotlight, and everyone else in the room is holding up a magnifying glass to examine our flaws.
Exactly.
But the objective reality is they are playing the exact same defensive game in their own heads. They are aggressively worrying about how they look, how they sound, if their joke landed, what their next intelligent point is going to be.
The spotlight effect is a very well-documented psychological phenomenon,
Uh-huh.
and it explains this perfectly. We vastly, exponentially overestimate how much attention other people are paying to our actions, our physical appearance, and our minor missteps.
That's so true.
The reality is remarkably simple. Most people aren't analyzing your words because they are using all their cognitive bandwidth to monitor their own social standing.
Right.
Recognizing that shared, foundational human self-absorption is the very first key to unlocking your own conversational freedom. It lowers the stakes. You aren't performing for a panel of judges. You are interacting with a group of people who are just as worried about being judged as you are.
So if the barrier isn't that we lack the vocabulary or the intelligence, if the barrier is entirely internal, this primitive fear fueled by our own extreme self-focus, how do we physically and mentally break out of our own heads before we even open our mouths?
That's the big question.
Because clearly, if you wait until the exact moment it is time to speak to try and summon confidence, it is way too late. The battle is already lost. You're already flooded with cortisol.
You're exactly right. Waiting for the moment of execution is a failed strategy. That brings us to the pre-conversation primer.
Okay, the primer.
This is the specific mindset and the physical calibration required before you even step into the conversational arena. The initial stumbling block here is what is broadly referred to as the trap of overthinking.
Yes, the mental sabotage. The predictive processing in our brains goes completely haywire.
Exactly.
We actively imagine every possible negative outcome before the conversation even begins. We are literally creating problems out of thin air that don't even exist yet.
We really do.
It is as if we are the director of a movie inside our own heads. And given the choice of any genre, we proactively choose to direct a devastating tragedy instead of a lighthearted comedy.
It is a remarkable, though deeply flawed, human tendency to anticipate failure as a mechanism for preparing for it. The brain thinks, if I imagine the worst-case scenario, I won't be caught off guard when it happens.
Right, like we're protecting ourselves.
But in the context of human conversation, anticipating failure practically guarantees it.
Yeah.
Why? because simulating that failure in your mind instantly alters your physical and emotional baseline.
Oh, wow.
If you are standing at the edge of a networking event thinking, what if I embarrass myself?
Mm-hmm.
Your nervous system reacts as if you are currently embarrassing yourself. Your posture will reflect that fear. You will physically close off. Your vocal cords will actually tighten.
So how do we intervene in that process? How do we flip that internal script before the physical lockdown happens?
The framework we are looking at offers a really specific, almost mechanical way to reframe the what if.
Okay.
It tells us to take that negative, catastrophic, hypothetical, and consciously, forcefully invert it into a positive.
Instead of letting the brain spin on what if I embarrass myself, we have to actively intervene.
Yes, you ask yourself, what if this conversation goes incredibly well? Or what if I meet an intensely interesting person today?
What if they actually really enjoy talking with me?
What's fascinating here is how this small, deliberate shift in framing completely alters a person's energetic projection before a single word is spoken.
It changes the vibe.
Totally.
Yeah.
You aren't fundamentally changing how the brain works. You're taking the exact same mechanism, your brain's ability to imagine the future, and you are just pointing the lens in a different direction
I love that.
by asking, what if they enjoy talking with me? Why? You are engaging in cognitive priming. You are programming your reticular activating system to start scanning the environment for signals of acceptance, warmth, and opportunity, rather than hyperscanning for signals of rejection.
So you smoothly transition from a defensive, heavily guarded posture to an open, curious posture.
Exactly.
It is essentially a hack. You are tricking your own nervous system into standing down.
Oh.
And speaking of the nervous system, this moves us directly from this internal mental shift right into the physical presence.
That's my body.
It brings us out of the abstract mind and straight into the tangible body. Because you can think positive thoughts all day, but if your body is signaling panic, people will read the panic.
Absolutely.
The physical cues suggested here are incredibly grounded. The very first one is simply standing comfortably and actively relaxing the shoulders.
We really need to look at the mechanics of that specific movement. When we are trapped in the social anxiety of, what if I sound silly? Our physical bodies brace for an attack.
Right.
The most common manifestation of this is that our shoulders physically creep up toward our ears, guarding the neck.
Mm-hmm.
It is a literal, primal response to an environmental stressor.
I do that all the time without realizing it.
Most people do. Consciously pulling your shoulders down and back isn't just about looking confident to other people. It sends a bidirectional feedback signal through the vagus nerve back to your brain, essentially telling your brain, we are not under attack, we are safe.
Wow, so it works backwards too.
Exactly. It forces a deeper breath, it lowers your resting heart rate, and crucially, it changes the physical resonance of your vocal cords so that when you do finally speak, your voice doesn't have that thin, tight, nervous pitch.
Your body leads and the mind follows. And the next critical physical cue is about where you are directing your visual focus.
This one is huge.
The instruction is to actively look around the room, taking in the environment, rather than staring down at the floor or staring intently at your phone. Which is difficult because when you are nervous, the floor feels like the absolute safest place in the world to look.
It really does.
It is static, it is predictable, and it demands zero emotional energy from you. But when you lock your eyes on the floor, you are physically building a wall between yourself and the environment. You become an inaccessible island.
Staring at the floor is a form of visual retreat. It signals submission and disengagement. By forcing yourself to look around the room, you accomplish two physiological goals.
What are they?
First, you establish situational awareness, which subtly signals to everyone else in the room that you are present in the shared space, not just trapped in your own internal anxiety loop.
Makes sense.
Second, and more importantly from a neurological standpoint, you engage your peripheral vision. When we are highly stressed, our vision narrows into a tight foveal focus, like tunnel vision,
Oh, like a scanning for prey?
or prey scanning for an escape route. Activating your panoramic vision by scanning the room actively downregulates the sympathetic nervous system. It tells the brain there are no predators on the horizon.
I love the mechanics of this.
And this expansive visual scanning perfectly sets up the most critical physical cue of all the power of the smile.
I think we really need to pause on this because it sounds so incredibly basic, right? Like a cliche from a 1950s etiquette book. Just smile and the world smiles with you.
Right, it sounds a bit cheesy.
It does. But the observation here is profoundly deeper than just trying to look pleasant. They point out that a genuine smile makes you appear immediately approachable. It essentially starts the conversation before you even say a word.
He is the ultimate tool for nonverbal bridge building. A genuine smile, specifically a Duchenne smile, which engages the muscles around the eyes, communicates a baseline, unmistakable level of goodwill.
Okay, a Duchenne smile.
You have to remember that human beings are constantly subconsciously running threat assessments on everyone they encounter. When you meet someone new, the very first question their lizard brain asks is this person a friend or a foe? Are they a threat to my status?
And a smile answers that.
Yes. When you offer a genuine smile, you instantly answer that subconscious question. You disarm their natural defenses.
Yeah.
You make it neurologically safer for them to interact with you.
It is the absolute most efficient shortcut to establishing baseline trust. You are projecting warmth outward, which acts as an invitation. So let's look at where we are. Our mindset is shifted. We are anticipating a positive outcome.
Yep.
Our shoulders are dropped, signaling safety to our own brain. Our posture is open. Our eyes are scanning the room rather than the floor, and we are wearing a genuine smile. We are perfectly physically primed.
We are ready.
But the rubber eventually has to meet the road. We actually have to break the silence. What are the literal first words that should come out of our mouths?
This specific moment is where the panic usually comes rushing back in. People feel this immense, crushing pressure to be incredibly witty, profoundly insightful, or relentlessly charming right out of the gate.
They feel like they need a cinematic opening monologue.
The myth of the perfect line. It is such a relief to see this myth completely dismantled. The core rule here is brilliantly freeing.
Which is?
You do not need a perfect opening line. In fact, attempting to be overly clever or perfect usually backfires because it feels rehearsed and performative.
Like a pickup line at a networking event.
Exactly. It's awkward. Simple works exponentially better. You don't need a spectacular joke. You just need a gentle, low-friction on-ramp into an interaction.
And we can break this down into 3 incredibly actionable tactics. Let's start with tactic 1, shared observations.
Shared observations are an incredibly elegant way to initiate an interaction, primarily because they drastically reduce the cognitive load for everyone involved.
How so?
By pointing out something obvious in the immediate shared environment, you are creating an instant microconnection through a shared experience. You bypass all the awkwardness of trying to introduce yourself cold.
Oh, that makes sense.
You are essentially communicating, we are both existing in this exact same space, experiencing this exact same external stimuli right now. It creates an instant, albeit temporary, in-group dynamic.
The examples provided for this are brilliantly mundane. If you are standing at a corporate event, you don't need to comment on macroeconomic trends.
Please don't.
Right. You just say, this venue has a surprisingly great atmosphere, or the acoustics in here are intense.
Yeah.
Or if you are stuck in a massive slow-moving line waiting for coffee or to register for a badge, you simply turn and say, well, looks like absolutely everyone had the exact same idea at the exact same time today.
It is so ordinary, but that is precisely why it is effective. It carries zero conversational risk, it isn't threatening, and it doesn't demand a high-level intellectual response.
That lack of demand is the secret. It requires very little processing power from the other person to respond to a shared observation.
Right. They don't have to formulate a complex opinion or reveal anything personal.
They can simply agree, yeah, this line is brutal. And once that initial low-stakes agreement happens, the ice is officially broken. The social barrier has been breached.
The conversational engine has been turned on.
Exactly. And from that point of initial agreement, you can smoothly steer the interaction into tactic 2, which is the open question upgrade.
Now, this is where we transition from merely breaking the ice to actually building a foundation. We upgrade from those dead-end binary yes or no questions. We want to actively invite longer, more detailed narrative answers.
For example, the absolute standard default question at any gathering is something like, did you enjoy the keynote speaker?
A classic closed question.
It literally only requires a yes or a no. And once they say yes, the conversation stalls, the silence returns, and you have to start all over again.
It's exhausting.
So the upgrade is to shift the structure. Instead of, did you enjoy it, you ask, what was your favorite part of the keynote speaker's presentation?
It is vital to understand the difference in the cognitive architecture of those two inquiries. Did you enjoy the event? Is a binary check. It is a gate that immediately closes the moment the person answers.
Right.
What was your favorite part? Forces an entirely different process in the listener's brain. It forces them to actively search their recent memory, Select a specific experience, evaluate why they liked it, and then articulate that thought into a narrative.
It demands a story, not a data point.
Exactly. You are handing them the microphone and giving them a prompt.
Let's look at another classic trap. You meet someone and ask, do you travel often for work? Again, yes or no. The upgraded version is, what is the most interesting place your work has taken you?
Oh, that's much better.
You are practically guaranteeing that they will provide you with a compelling story in response, because everyone has at least one interesting travel story.
And there is a highly strategic, almost hidden benefit to asking these open questions. By prompting them to tell a story, you are engaging in what we can call cognitive offloading.
What's that?
You are letting the other person do the heavy lifting of the conversation early on. As they tell you about the interesting place they visited, they get to talk about themselves, which triggers dopamine release in their brain, making them feel good about the interaction.
When you win.
And simultaneously, you get a 30 to 60-second window to just breathe, regulate your own nervous system, let your heart rate settle, and gather contextual information that you can use to keep the conversation flowing.
It takes the intense pressure of performance completely off of your shoulders. You aren't tap dancing to entertain them. You are just providing the stage for them to shine.
Exactly.
And then we have tactic 3, authentic compliments. Now, using a compliment as an icebreaker is a classic move, but there is a massive flashing neon warning sign attached to this tactic.
Oh, absolutely. The compliment must be rigorously, undeniably authentic.
Human beings are incredibly perceptive creatures. We possess a highly tuned radar for forced, fake, or strategic flattery. We can smell it from a mile away.
A forced compliment doesn't feel like a gift. It feels entirely transactional. It feels like a manipulation.
Yeah, it's uncomfortable.
If you walk up to someone you barely know and offer a generic, unearned compliment like, you seem so incredibly smart, the other person's subconscious immediately flags it as suspicious. They wonder, what do they want from me? Are they trying to extract a favor?
It triggers their defenses rather than lowering them.
Exactly. The framework provides much better, highly targeted examples. Instead of broad flattery, you observe and comment on specifics.
Things like, that is a really uniquely designed jacket, or I really appreciated your presentation style during that last panel, or the way you framed that problem during the meeting was a really creative approach.
Notice how granular and specific those observations are.
Yes.
They are highly effective because they focus entirely on the choices the person made, rather than innate, unearned traits.
Like complimenting their effort.
Right. Complimenting someone's creative problem-solving or their specific presentation style acknowledges their effort, their agency, and their specific contribution to the environment. It makes them feel truly, deeply seen and appreciated for the work they put in.
I think we need to move away from the cliche idea that compliments are just icing on the cake or spices in a dish. Let's look at them more like tuning forks.
Okay, tuning forks.
If a compliment is genuine and based on keen observation, it acts like a perfectly struck tuning fork. It instantly resonates with something the person already values about themselves, and it creates a beautiful harmony between the two of you.
I like that analogy.
But if the compliment is fake, strategic, or heavy-handed just to force an interaction, it's like striking a cracked tuning fork. It just creates a dissonant, uncomfortable clatter that makes everyone want to cover their ears and walk away.
That is a much more accurate mechanical description. Authenticity is the resonance. Without it, you just have noise.
Okay, so let's summarize our progress. We have shifted the internal mindset, we have mastered our physical baseline, and we have successfully broken the initial silence using a low-stakes shared observation, an upgraded open question, or a resonant, authentic compliment.
We are doing great.
Getting those first few words out and getting a positive response is a massive victory. But a conversation is obviously a dynamic system. It isn't a monologue. You can't just drop an opening line, smile, and then stare at them waiting for a medal.
No, you definitely can't.
How do we keep the momentum going once the other person actually responds and the ball's rolling?
This is a critical juncture. This is where we transition from the initiation phase of the interaction into the maintenance phase. We are looking at the art of the rally.
The rally.
Yes, the specific active listening skills and momentum-building techniques required to keep the interaction alive and thriving. And there's a truly profound insight here regarding how to generate the next thing to say.
What is it?
It suggests that the absolute best follow-up question is almost never something you have to invent out of thin air. Rather, It is usually hidden directly inside the very last sentence the other person just spoke.
The hidden follow-up.
Hmm.
This concept is a complete game changer because it instantly removes the exhausting cognitive burden of constantly thinking, oh God, what do I say next? What's a new topic?
Exactly.
You don't have to rapidly scan your brain for a brilliant new subject. You just have to listen to the clues they are dropping. Let's run a specific scenario.
Let's do it.
Let's say you ask an open question and the person responds with, well, I haven't traveled much for work lately because I recently started spending all my free time learning portrait photography.
Okay.
The absolute critical failure here would be to hear the word photography, get anxious about what to say, and awkwardly pivot to your own separate interests. Like saying, oh, photography, nice. I like watching foreign movies.
That kills the momentum instantly.
It does. The key is to stay precisely on the thread they just handed you.
If we look at the underlying mechanics here, good flowing conversations do not require you to be a brilliant improvisational comedian. They do not require immense, spontaneous creativity. They grow naturally and organically out of simple, highly focused curiosity.
Right.
In linguistics, there is a concept called lexical entrainment, where conversational partners begin to subconsciously adopt each other's vocabulary and phrasing to signal alignment. When they mention portrait photography, they are handing you the dial to the safe. Your only job is to turn that exact dial to see if it clicks.
And the execution of this is so simple. You just dig one layer deeper into the exact plot of land they just showed you.
You ask things like, what is it about portrait photography specifically that drew you in?
Or how steep has the learning curve been with the new equipment?
Or what's the most challenging lighting situation you've tried to shoot in? You are just taking their premise and expanding it.
By doing this, you are demonstrating unequivocally that you are actually processing the semantic content of what they're saying, rather than just waiting impatiently for your turn to speak.
You are proving that their words have value to you, which leads directly into the next vital, often overlooked component of conversational maintenance, showing active, ongoing interest.
Yes, small reactions do an incredible amount of heavy lifting in keeping a conversation alive. We're talking about very simple interjections. Really? That is fascinating. I never actually thought about the lighting that way. Tell me more about how you set that up.
They seem so incredibly basic, almost like filler words. But these tiny phrases are essential.
They really are.
They encourage the other person to continue elaborating because it fulfills this deep, primal human desire to feel heard and validated by the tribe.
It provides a continuous real-time loop of validation. We call this back-channeling.
When someone is speaking, they are in a vulnerable position.
Yeah.
They are unconsciously, continuously scanning your face and monitoring your vocalizations for signs of approval, comprehension, or interest.
Right.
If you're entirely silent, completely stoic, and just staring at them without making a sound, the speaker's brain will naturally start to register that silence as rejection.
They'll think you hate the story.
They will assume they're boring you, they will falter, and they will wrap up their story as quickly as possible to escape the perceived awkwardness.
So these small reactions, a slow nod, a well-timed, wow, an intrigued tell me more, are the rhythmic pacing of human connection. It is the fuel that keeps their narrative engine running. It explicitly signals, I am tracking with you, I am invested, please keep going.
It is the conversational equivalent of keeping a balloon from touching the floor. You don't need to smash it back into the sky. You just need tiny, gentle little taps to keep it suspended in the air.
But eventually, you have to contribute more substantive material than just saying, really? Every 30 seconds, you have to share your own experiences too.
Of course.
Now, the traditional analogy here is that a conversation is like a tennis match. The ball has to move back and forth over the net, but I think that analogy is fundamentally flawed.
Oh, why is that?
Tennis is adversarial. You are trying to hit the ball where the other person can't reach it. You are trying to win points and defeat them.
That is an excellent critique of that model.
Well,
A good conversation is not a zero-sum game where one person wins by dominating the exchange.
exactly. I think a much more accurate metaphor is that a good conversation is like two people trying to crack a complex safe together.
I like that.
You are turning the dial by asking questions. You are both listening intently for the subtle clicks, the changes in tone, the sparks of excitement in their voice, and then you adjust your grip and try a new combination based on the feedback the mechanism gives you. You're working together to unlock a genuine connection.
That's a great visual.
But I have to push back on a natural human instinct here. because it is incredibly natural to want to relate to someone by sharing our own similar experiences.
Right.
If we are cracking the safe, and they say they love portrait photography, and I also happen to love photography, my immediate overwhelming instinct is to excitedly jump in and say, oh my gosh, me too. I just bought this amazing new mirrorless camera, and I went to this incredible state park last weekend, and I took all these photos of the sunrise.
And suddenly it's all about you.
Exactly. How do we relate to people and build that vital common ground without accidentally stealing the spotlight, hijacking their narrative, and making the entire interaction about us?
You have just described the ultimate conversational tightrope. The desire to connect through shared experience is powerful, but it easily tips over into conversational narcissism.
Conversational narcissism, wow.
The resolution for this tension is what we can call the validation pivot. It is perfectly fine and frankly necessary to share a related experience to build rapport and prove that you understand their world.
Okay, so sharing is allowed.
Yes, but the golden unbreakable rule is proportionality. You share your related experience to validate their point, not to supersede it. You share just enough to prove you understand the combination to the safe, but then you deliberately, consciously hand the dial back to them.
So it looks something more like, oh, you are getting into portrait photography. That is so challenging but rewarding. I actually took a master class on landscape photography a few years ago and completely fell in love with the process. What kind of lens setup are you using for your portraits?
Precisely executed.
Yeah.
You establish the shared ground. I also have experience in this domain, so I understand your passion, but notice the architecture of your response.
Right.
The sentence ends with a targeted question that immediately redirects the focus, the energy, and the spotlight back onto their experience. You contributed to the momentum without hijacking the vehicle.
You contributed and then you passed the mic. Okay, so now we know how to initiate the interaction, and we know how to keep the momentum going through active listening, back-channeling, and the validation pivot. We are doing great.
We are practically conversational experts now.
Almost. But what about the catastrophic failures? What are the unforced errors, the specific behavioral traps that cause a perfectly good conversation to suddenly derail and crash into a wall?
This is where we have to critically examine the confidence killers. These are the specific, often subconscious behaviors we adopt, usually triggered by internal anxiety, that actively undermine and sabotage the very connection we are trying so hard to build.
And there are 3 very specific, highly common mistakes that we need to dissect. Let's start with mistake number 1, which is arguably the most pervasive, the apology reflex.
Ugh, this one is everywhere.
It is so incredibly common, especially in professional environments. It is when nervous individuals, before they even articulate their idea, preface their thoughts with a litany of preemptive apologies.
They start their sentence with, sorry, this might be a stupid question, but...
Or, sorry, maybe this doesn't make total sense and feel free to ignore this, but...
We need to analyze the primate evolutionary biology of why we do this. This behavior is a form of status deferral. It is a preemptive strike against anticipated criticism.
Okay.
By explicitly calling your own idea stupid or irrelevant before anyone else has the chance to, you are subconsciously lowering yourself in the dominance hierarchy. You are essentially baring your neck.
That paints a vivid picture.
You are trying to soften the blow by saying, please don't attack my idea, I am already submitting to your superiority. You are lowering the expectations so drastically that you cannot possibly fall short.
But the severe warning here is that in a modern environment, whether it's a casual party or a high-stakes board meeting, baring your neck doesn't usually elicit sympathy.
No, it doesn't.
It elicits a subconscious assessment that you are not confident and therefore your idea lacks value. This behavior immediately and fatally weakens your message. By the time you actually get to the substance of your idea, you have actively instructed the listener not to take it seriously.
It's self-sabotage.
The directive to correct this is incredibly powerful. Your idea deserves space. Say it clearly without the preamble and then simply stop talking. Trust the words.
Trust the words. That is a profound paradigm-shifting instruction. When you aggressively strip away the apologies and the qualifiers, you are forcing yourself to stand firmly behind the intellectual merit of what you're saying.
It feels risky, though.
It will absolutely feel horribly exposed and vulnerable at first because you have removed your protective shield. But projecting that vulnerability without apologizing projects a massive aura of self-respect. If you do not respect your own ideas enough to present them cleanly, you cannot reasonably expect anyone else to respect them either.
It is a brutal habit to break, but it instantly changes how people perceive your intelligence. Okay, let's look at mistake number 2. The sheer terror of silence, which invariably leads to frantic, excessive talking.
The babbling phase.
We have all experienced this nightmare. You say your piece, the other person doesn't immediately respond, and the silence stretches out for 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds.
And in your mind, that 3-second gap feels like an absolute agonizing eternity.
The social pressure builds until it feels like physical pain. So to alleviate the pressure, you just start babbling continuously because the silence feels socially fatal.
It is a pure panic response. Human conversational rhythm is deeply ingrained in us. In a standard exchange, the gap between one person finishing a sentence and the other person starting is roughly 200 milliseconds.
That's incredibly fast.
So when a gap extends to 2 or 3 full seconds, our brain interprets it as a severe violation of the social script. We view silence as a terrifying void that must be frantically filled, or worse, as undeniable proof that we have bored the other person and the conversation is dying.
But the critical insight to master here is that intentional silence is a high-level tool, not a failure.
Exactly.
A short, confident pause gives everyone in the interaction room to literally breathe. It gives the listener vital cognitive processing time to digest the complex thing you just said, and it gives you time to strategically think about where the conversation should naturally flow next.
It is the white space on a page. If you open a novel and there are absolutely no margins, no paragraph breaks, and no chapter headings, just an endless, dense wall of unbroken text, it would be exhausting and unreadable.
Conversations desperately require that white space to be legible. You do not have to fill every single microsecond of dead air with the sound of your own voice.
Exactly. Embracing that brief silence and holding your ground comfortably within it demonstrates a tremendous amount of social power and self-regulation. It shows the other person that you are secure in your own skin and you are not desperate to endlessly entertain them to earn their approval.
Which brings us directly to mistake number 3, poor eye contact. Now, everyone knows eye contact is important. That's basic, but we need to explore the incredibly delicate mechanical balance required here.
Because eye contact communicates confidence, active interest, and respect. It shows you are cognitively engaged with the person in front of you.
However, there is a very important, highly nuanced caveat regarding cognitive load management. The instruction is to maintain natural eye contact.
Right.
It is not an instruction to lock eyes and intensely stare the person down without blinking like a sociopath.
Definitely do not do that.
If you just lock eyes with someone, refuse to blink, and never let your gaze drift, you instantly turn a casual coffee chat into a high-intensity hostage negotiation. It crosses the line from friendly engagement into predatory behavior very, very quickly.
Natural eye contact is a fluid, dynamic system. It involves looking directly at the person while they're actively speaking to show you receiving their transmission.
Okay.
But when you speak, or when you are asked a complex question, it is entirely natural and biologically necessary to let your gaze drift slightly upward or to the side to access your memory centers or formulate a complex thought.
Oh, that makes total sense.
That is how the brain manages cognitive load. You look away to think, and then you return your gaze to their eyes to deliver the thought. That is fluid and natural.
But the absolute failure state, looking at the floor or constantly staring at your phone or continuously scanning the room over their shoulder to see who else is there, is a massive confidence killer.
It signals either profound social submission or a complete insulting disinterest in the person you're talking to.
Okay, here is where all of this crystallizes for me. When we step back and look at all 3 of these major unforced errors, the apology reflex, the frantic babbling to fill the white space, and the inability to maintain fluid eye contact, they are not isolated mistakes.
You know what I mean?
They all stem from the exact same psychological root cause. They all stem from a fundamental, debilitating lack of trust.
Walk me through that synthesis. How do they connect to trust?
Well, think about it. The apology reflex comes directly from not trusting your own ideas to stand on their own inherent merit without you shielding them.
Wow. Yeah.
The frantic, nervous talking comes entirely from not trusting the silence, not trusting that the human connection you are building is strong enough to survive a simple 3-second pause without collapsing.
And the eye contact.
The poor, evasive eye contact comes from not trusting the interaction itself. It's a subconscious desire to hide from judgment or constantly look for a physical escape route. Every single one of these errors is just a symptom of a massive deficit of trust in the moment.
That is an incredibly sharp observation. Building true conversational confidence is not about memorizing more vocabulary words. It is ultimately the deliberate process of slowly rebuilding that trust.
Right.
It is learning to trust the value of your own thoughts, trusting the natural breathing rhythm of human speech, and fundamentally trusting that the other person is a willing, collaborative participant in the interaction, rather than a hostile, hypercritical judge waiting for you to fail.
So let's fast forward. Let's say we have navigated this entire gauntlet successfully. We pre-gamed our nervous system, we dropped our shoulders, we smiled, we initiated with a brilliant shared observation, we cracked the safe by asking layered open questions, we used the validation pivot, and we completely avoided apologizing for our own existence.
We nailed it.
We just had a genuinely great 15-minute conversation. But here's the reality of the physical world. Even the absolute best, most sparkling interactions have a logistical shelf life. You cannot stand by the coffee urn and talk to the exact same person at a conference for 7 hours.
No, eventually you have to leave.
You have to physically walk away. How do we stick the landing without undoing all the goodwill we just built?
This specific transition is often the most excruciatingly awkward part for people who struggle with social anxiety. Knowing how to definitively and smoothly end a conversation is a crucial, standalone skill that requires a specific blend of tact, warmth, and structural clarity.
Because the social contract of a conversation is ambiguous, there is no bell that rings to tell you it's over.
They refer to this in the material as the exit strategy, and they provide highly specific, graceful exit lines so we don't just find ourselves in a lull, panic, abruptly say, okay, bye, and literally run away into the crowd.
Yeah, please don't run away.
They suggest utilizing clear phrases like, it was genuinely great talking with you about your photography, or I should probably get going and mingle a bit more, but I really enjoyed our conversation, or simply, it was great meeting you, I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.
We need to analyze why those specific phrases are so mechanically effective. They work perfectly because they accomplish 3 vital social tasks simultaneously.
Okay, what's the first one?
First, they provide a definitive, unambiguous structural boundary. They signal clearly to the other person's brain this interaction is now concluding, removing any lingering awkwardness about who is going to speak next.
And the second.
Second, they explicitly express appreciation for the time spent, which leaves the other person feeling validated and respected. And third, they provide a completely socially acceptable, face-saving logistical reason for the departure, I should get going, without requiring you to invent a complex, fake excuse about needing to make a phone call.
They are incredibly clean and efficient. And there's an add-on here. If you actually really connected with the person and you genuinely want to maintain the connection for the future, you append a forward-looking phrase.
Like what?
Things like, I'd love to hear how that new lens works out for you. Let's continue this another time, or hopefully we'll cross paths again soon. It essentially leaves the door to the relationship propped wide open, and it ends the entire interaction on a distinctly positive ascending note.
It firmly secures the social value of the interaction you just successfully navigated, while gracefully and confidently allowing both parties to reclaim their autonomy and move on with their day. It serves as the perfect, elegant punctuation mark to a well-constructed conversational sentence.
All right, we are nearing the absolute end of our deep dive today, and we have finally arrived at the climax of the framework.
The ultimate secret.
The hosts over at the Loop analysis posed the ultimate distilling question to themselves. If you could only take one single piece of advice away from this entire exhaustive breakdown, if you had to completely throw away all the tactical icebreakers, all the graceful exit lines, all the biofeedback posture hacks, and you could just keep one core philosophy, what is it? What's the one thing that matters most?
And their answer to that question is deceptively simple. It sounds like a cliche on the surface, yet when understood mechanically, it represents arguably the absolute hardest cognitive discipline in human communication.
The answer is listen. Really listen.
We have to rigorously unpack what really listening actually means in this specific neurological context. Because the vast majority of us walk around believing we are excellent listeners, when in objective reality, we are merely enduring the other person's words while we anxiously wait for our turn to speak.
The framework is very careful to explicitly define what real listening is not. It means you are not listening while rapidly, frantically trying to prepare your next brilliant sentence in your head.
Right.
It means you are not listening while simultaneously worrying about your posture, or obsessing over whether you should use an open question next, or wondering if there's a piece of spinach in your teeth.
It is the absolute suspension of the ego. It is complete, unfiltered presence.
Exactly. Real profound listening is a state of absolute focus, cognitive receptivity. You are voluntarily turning off the predictive processing engine in your brain that is always trying to simulate the future.
That sounds peaceful, honestly.
It is. You are taking in their actual words, their micro-expressions, their vocal tone, and you are allowing that data to process without immediately trying to formulate a clever counter-argument or a hilarious anecdote to top theirs. You are simply holding a quiet, secure space for their expression to exist.
Which brings us to the core paradox of confidence. This is such a profound paradigm-shifting final point. The framework posits that true, unshakable conversational confidence appears naturally only when your attention moves completely away from yourself and is entirely 100% directed toward the other person.
It is a brilliant, beautiful paradox.
Yeah.
The harder you try to manufacture confidence internally, the more elusive it becomes.
It really is. If you want to be genuinely more confident, you literally have to stop trying to act confident. You have to stop aggressively monitoring your own performance. As long as you are intensely focused on yourself, monitoring how your voice sounds, assessing how you look, worrying if you are executing the exit strategy correctly, you will always inevitably be trapped in anxiety because you are treating yourself as an object to be evaluated. True, effortless confidence is, at its core, simply self-forgetfulness.
When you genuinely, deeply focus all of your cognitive bandwidth on the human being standing in front of you, when you suspend your ego and really listen to, the anxiety simply has nowhere left to live in your brain.
It starves the anxiety.
Your medial prefrontal cortex is entirely occupied by processing the other person's reality. You aren't paralyzed with fear about what to say next because your genuine, unforced curiosity about their experience will naturally, organically generate the next appropriate question.
The hesitation dissolves entirely because the core objective of the interaction is no longer about fiercely protecting your own social survival. It has shifted entirely to discovering their story.
Right.
Really, truly listen. Internalizing that one concept just completely dismantles and reconstructs how you approach a room full of strangers. It removes all the armor.
It absolutely does. It shifts the entire paradigm of conversation from being a high-stakes, terrifying performance to being a collaborative process of discovery.
So to bring all of these disparate threads together and summarize this incredibly dense, rich analysis, conversational confidence is not an inborn genetic trait. You aren't just magically born with the innate, effortless ability to work a room and charm everyone you meet.
No, it is an active, deliberate, and sometimes uncomfortable practice.
Every single small exchange you engage in, whether it is a fleeting 10 seconds with a barista, a quick update with a coworker, or a complex negotiation with a stranger at a professional conference, matters.
Every single open question you ask helps build and strengthen the neurological pathways.
And yes, crucially, even every awkward stumble, every joke that falls flat, and every silence that stretches on a little too long and makes you sweat is an incredibly useful lesson. It isn't a failure, it is just valuable data informing your next attempt.
It is a continuous, iterative process of calibration. You try a combination, you listen to the clicks, you learn from the resistance, you adjust your grip, and you try again.
And the ultimate call to action here is this. Do not wait for the absolute perfect frictionless timing. Stop waiting for the stars to magically align and your anxiety to drop to absolute zero before you open your mouth. It won't happen.
No, it won't.
Join the conversation while your heart is still beating a little too fast. Share that idea that is bubbling up in your mind. Ask the question. Step up to the safe and turn the dial. Because you might be profoundly surprised by how well it actually goes when you finally stop trying to protect yourself.
All of this analysis, however, raises a very important, slightly uncomfortable question. A thought I think we should leave everyone with as we wrap up this deep dive.
Let's hear it.
If the ultimate mechanical secret to conversational confidence is simply taking the intense focus off of ourselves and truly deeply paying attention to the reality of the other person, then is our crippling fear of speaking up actually just a hidden symptom of our own extreme self-absorption?
Oh, that is a sharp pivot.
Think about the implications of it. We frame social anxiety as a vulnerability.
Oh.
But if we truly, genuinely cared more about them, if we cared more about hearing their stories, ensuring their comfort, and learning about their experience in the world, that we cared about how we look, how intelligent we sound, and how perfectly we are perceived, would social anxiety in these everyday conversational moments even exist?
Wow.
Or is social anxiety at its very core just a form of inverted narcissism, where we fundamentally believe we are the absolute center of everyone's judgmental universe?
That is a heavy, brilliantly provocative thought to walk away with. It completely flips the script on why we stay quiet in the first place. Are we holding back because we're just being polite and cautious, or are we holding back because we are entirely, obsessively self-absorbed with our own image? That is absolutely something to chew on the next time you find yourself standing on the edge of a circle, feeling that familiar hesitation, holding back the perfect comment. Thank you so much for taking this deep dive with us today. We hope you feel a little more equipped, a little more present, and significantly more ready to just suspend the ego and jump into the conversation.
Let's continue this another time.
See you on the next deep dive.
See you in the next episode of Loop the Loop English.